Welcome to Load Bearing Beams.
Welcome.
May I service you?
Oh, you're so Rexy. No,
Yeah.
that's not.
Happy Rex Manning Day, everybody. And this is our podcast where we talk about movies with the person we're married to. I'm married to Lacey Roth.
I'm married to Matt Stokes, who was just now talking.
Just now springing stuff on you. So on this podcast, we pick a movie that the other person...
Right.
That the other person has not seen, has lacks familiarity with, a lost treasure from our past,
So
and we unearth it.
perhaps we ourselves have lacking familiarity because of the time that has passed since we last seen this movie we say is good.
Exactly. When you watched the Back to the Future movies as a kid, you're like, these are great. Marty McFly's a cool teen. He's a badass. Don't call him chicken. That's what I want to be when I grow up to be 16.
Ooh.
Or perhaps you watch Empire Records
Perhaps you do.
and you think this is
Troubled
pretty great.
youths. Count me in.
They all have hearts of gold and they just love being with each other.
Man, do they.
So, but put some distance between you and these films. What does that distance do when you revisit it? And what happens when you watch it with your partner and they judge you for it? That's what we explore on this podcast. Today, we're talking Back to the Future Part 2. That's Part 2 for you non-Francophones.
It's Francophile.
Both?
Oh, one's phonics and one's...
I don't know. I think
Okay.
it is Francophone means something, but I did mean file. Oh, fuck me.
It's
Okay.
like a way that you can call
And what's
that actor.
what? If you're a big fan of James Franco,
You can
you're-
call him up on a Francophone.
Oh, I get it.
That's what I was thinking.
Good.
All right.
And what's your movie, Lacey?
Empire Records.
All right, let's get to them. Back to the Future.
Doc! There's a
Marty.
clock! I need to talk to the doc. Is the doctor in?
I wonder what he'll say.
I seem to have erased my kids and things. I got a speeding ticket when I was 36. We gotta go back in time.
We got to go to the future and stop my shitty kid from doing something.
What privilege. How
Well-
nice.
Even when I was a kid, this bothered me because you could just be like, hey, Marty of 1985, 30 years from now, stop your kid from doing this. We don't need to travel into the future.
Oh.
Because we're going to travel into the future anyway. Plus,
So
the
true.
third Back to the Future film ends with Doc giving his lesson, which is the future isn't written. We can make it anything we want it to be. Okay, so the whole second movie didn't have to happen. But here's the point. Back to the
Or
Future.
the third?
Back to the Future Part 2 came out in 1989, and it was directed by Robert Zemeckis. It stars, of course, Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. This is the second Robert Zemeckis film we've covered on Load Bearing Beams. We also did Death Becomes Her. You know the Back to the Future trilogy, listeners. I'm sure most of you do. It's one of the staples of internet nostalgia, I think, because so many people, grow up with it, and it has so many artifacts like the hoverboard that you like to pine for. But I chose the second part of the movie. I chose the second part of the trilogy because it was definitely my favorite
And I hadn't seen it.
when I was a kid, and
That's
you
kind of
haven't seen it. So I
important,
was
right.
going to ask, what's your familiarity with these
Well, so
movies?
that's the important part of this. Maybe we didn't say that in the opening, but the other person has to have not seen it. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's you have to be the only one vouching for it. So in this instance, I had not seen 2 or 3. I have very little memory of the first one. These were not my movies. I think I didn't watch it till someone told me that I had to. An ex-husband of mine, I think, because he was constantly quoting this movie. So this was his gold member.
This particular movie or just the series?
Well, I don't know, I guess, because I don't know how many things are holdovers from the first one because I'm not familiar enough to know what I'm missing there.
Yeah.
So it's a little weird to start on the second one, but for sure I had not seen the second one, so that's why we started there. I knew who McFly was. I knew who Doc was. I know the quotes, and I generally think I know when they're happening in real life, when people are quoting. And I always, of course, I understand the significance of a DeLorean and how funny it is that it only has to get to, 88? Mm-hmm. And something about a flux capacitor. And That is what I know.
I don't think the flux capacitor is mentioned in this movie, actually.
I thought you meant my familiarity with the
Yeah,
franchise.
no, but it just occurred to me.
Oh, okay.
I remember when
It's
it's
a lot of sticking bananas in 2 bits of trash, and then it goes for miles
yeah, because you
into
can
its
convert
fusion.
waste into fuel using
Yeah,
future technology.
But very little waste. You're not really getting rid
That's
of a
right.
lot of waste. Only need to have eaten a banana a day ago.
Now, I remember when I saw Knocked Up
All right.
in 2007. There's a scene where Seth Rogen is talking to Katherine Heigl, and she doesn't know what Doc Brown or a DeLorean is, and he like gets really mad at her. And I remember identifying with him. It was like, yeah,
Well,
bro, you know, all
Well,
these.
no, there's no reason to have completely missed out on something that was, even if you didn't see it. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Oh no, I don't know. That just randomly popped in my head. Is
I feel like it is our job to know cultural references, even if we didn't see the movie. If they made such an impact that everyone around you quotes them, have some kind of intellectual curiosity where one day, after the 4th time you've heard someone call you Doc, and it's not Bugs Bunny related, you ask.
But I identified way too much with Seth Rogen in that moment. I was like, fucking women, huh? Not knowing Back to the Future.
Did it?
Because, like, okay,
All right.
so for your movie Empire Records, I've done a lot of reading about it. I knew I knew nothing about that movie, and it's such a fucking touchstone for so many people.
Thank you.
That I would
You were so ready for that to be one of those things where I was way off the mark and thinking it impacted more than just me.
Well, okay, we'll get to that, but no, yeah. If you just
Let's not go back to our future.
if you just judge it by like the summary in Wikipedia, you're like, okay, this movie.
Who judges
This
anything
movie
by
opened in '95. It made $300,000. Okay, who's ever heard of this movie?
I don't know. How do you become a cult classic if you're a big fucking box office smash hit?
So,
Matt!
so the first Back to the Future movie ends. By the way, I haven't seen the first or third Back to the Future movies, and I don't know how long,
And
10
you really
years or
do
more.
Get stuck on your seconds, don't you?
Second movies, they have a big advantage because you have already established a world, and now you get to do some weird shit. You get to do some bigger stuff,
Right.
or just some unexpected stuff. So it's
Where everyone
it's kind
knows.
of it's kind of like the ceiling of what you can achieve. It's
Exactly.
hard to pull off.
And it's nestled. It's nestled inside. You know that if there is a third, you're going to be safe in the second.
Yeah, you don't have to conclude.
Well,
you can just
I don't even mean that. I mean, if they manage to get enough steam to be able to do a third, absolutely they're going to fuck it up in the 3rd one. The second one must have been good enough. And the first one, for some reason, feels like it's not developed enough and it's not going to have all my little things in it.
But I was gonna say,
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen Back to the Future 1 in more than a decade, but like I know it's a better movie than 2. One thing that's so cool about this movie, about Back to the Future 2, is it's like, hey, let's go back to the first movie. And let's watch the first movie happen from a different angle. And like you can see it
Right.
happening in the background. And as it's happening, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that is a better movie, because the whole point of that movie, the impetus for Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale writing that movie was not time travel. It was just like, if I could go back in time and hang out with my parents when they were teenagers, would I be friends with them?
Which I love that
Yeah.
idea in question.
Uh-huh.
I'd be, yeah.
And the second movie is not about that at all. It's like, well, let's explore time
about
travel. What can you
hardly
do with
anything.
time travel?
All right.
And I love that. I'm a sucker for time travel.
Wait, but and I might be misremembering, but isn't there something why is there a time machine
Why?
in the first one? What is the reason?
Doc Brown invents a time
But
machine.
why does this young boy know this old man and they hang out?
That is never explained, and don't you ask why.
Okay. All right. So he's just a kooky inventor like Beauty and the Beast, Belle's father.
Yeah.
And he invents a time machine for kicks, and then he ends up needing to use it.
So
The kids are disappearing out of photos.
No. Okay. Oh, so
The children have gone missing.
Here's how I remember it. Doc Brown invites Marty to the mall parking lot late at night to demonstrate his time machine.
Duh.
And he goes back in time like 5 minutes or something in his DeLorean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Marty's like, oh my God, wow. And Doc is like, yeah, we can go anywhere we want. Like the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And he just types in a date on his thing. And he's just like, see, July 4th, 1776. It's amazing. Or we could go back into 1955. And there's some reason he types in 1955 that I don't remember. But he types that in, and then it's still input, and then the terrorists,
right.
who Brown bought plutonium from to power his time machine
Naturally.
show up, they kill
That's
Doc.
their mall.
They kill Doc Brown.
Oh, right.
And then Marty jumps into the car to flee them and gets up to 88 miles per hour, and
All
it
right.
sends him back to 1955.
All right, that works for me.
Okay.
That's fine.
It's an accident.
They were fucking around with some time things and shit got real. But the idea, I guess it's kind of interesting that if you did have access to this really powerful thing, it would be so tempting to constantly go back just a little in time and fix your life till it's perfect. Except for that, what about everyone fucking else? I mean, this whole movie is based on poor Marty McFly's kid gets arrested. Oh wow.
I know.
So he goes back and affects hundreds of thousands of lives, probably.
Well, and I was so I'm actually I
to
wanted
fix that.
I'm working on writing about this right now, but I was thinking like the very fact that the universe exists at all means like time travel's never going to get invented, because even the most careful time traveler, if we can assume that you can go back in time and change things, would destroy the universe in like two things.
Right, like kill too many ants or take too many honey
and
pots
I'd be terrible at time travel, because like you get a brand new computer, you know, and you're like, I'm going to treat this so well. I'm not going to go on any weird sites. I'm going to like.
That's how you abuse your computer?
No, I don't like I'm not going to go to any torrents
files?
or
Right.
anything. But then like 6 months later, you got viruses and shit. And you're like, fuck this thing.
You
Like
probably
that's what
shouldn't.
time travel would be like.
It's a little strange for people who don't know you that well for you to announce that the way you abuse your computer is by going to weird sites. That's totally not what you meant.
Fine, but
Torrent files,
but
people!
10 seconds later, I said
Pirate
torrent
Bay!
torrent files.
I said it for you, you filthy man.
Not Pirate Bay, ISO Hunt. Anyway.
Huh.
And then the other thing is Doc Brown in this movie, old Doc Brown encounters young Doc Brown, but young Doc Brown doesn't realize it's old Doc Brown. If I was using a time machine, I would assume that my future self is everywhere. Like if I see somebody in the grocery store with like a hat pulled down, I'd be like, future self,
let's just hang out.
Like he's doing all kinds of manipulating. But okay, so
Right.
this
Also, that is made very clear. That possibility of just constantly running into things that are strange and you can no longer trust the continuum of time, or that you're experiencing things that haven't already been altered or changed, or that someone's viewing you from I'm in the shower as my normal self and I just know my future self is fucking hiding behind the hamper because they don't want me to see them, but meanwhile, what the fuck am I doing in there? All right, but that. So Doc Brown accidentally leaves without Marty in the Middle-ish part. Why did that happen?
which part are you talking
They're in
about?
a field. They're in front of that home, that development that's going to be built for houses. Mm-hmm. Why does Doc go without him?
So Marty, they're in 1955, right?
Sure.
I think they are.
Yeah,
and Marty's gonna go
It's at the end.
find Biff and get the almanac.
Yeah.
Doc, why do they separate?
It's an accident. I just don't remember what. Anyway, okay. So something goes wrong, and all of a sudden, Marty finds himself alone. No Doc, no time machine.
Sorry. I remember now.
Go ahead.
We were talking about different things. Well, Doc saves Marty from the tunnel because using balloon ribbons, and then sets him down. But Doc Brown is still up in the air, and he says something like, "Oh, the wind's blowing. I got to circle around and come and land next to you." And while he's up in the air, he gets struck by lightning, and it sends him back in time.
Okay. Right. Absolutely. And so, I mean, not 2 minutes goes by, and then a man from 1955, because that's where they are, pulls up in the middle of nowhere and asks him if he's Marty McFly. Mm-hmm. And he says that he was given a package that was left at the police station for 70 years. And then, okay, great. So now we're going to continue. He's going to be fine. Doc just found him. But why at the very end are we first seen like, oh no, this can just constantly keep happening, just corrections to a fuck up to a thing. So like, this is why time travel stuff just does not work for me. There's no way to not have a whole or an explanation for why you'd let 5 hours happen in the past where things aren't really going right, without just assuming another set of yourselves are coming to come right back.
I mean, your larger point is correct.
And it just
but in answer to this exact question is like, Doc knew that's exactly where Marty would be, so he'd have to leave instructions.
Yes.
Like, I have definitive proof that this is where Marty will be at this time. That's the only way I know how to find him.
Okay, but why not go back to some other time where Marty was not around just yet? You hadn't picked him up, and I don't know, land the fucking DeLorean so you don't fly away?
Well, what is explained in the third movie is that his time machine breaks, so he's stuck in the past, and he has to just live there for the rest of his life. But he leaves instructions for Marty about how to.
Yes, but their future self already had the ability to go back to 55 to begin with. Why couldn't that version of them? Nope.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Nope,
He could have sent a letter to. He could have sent a letter
to
himself
in 85.
Now, I've read a lot of like time travel theory and
it's awful.
There's like if you got a letter from yourself, so there's an exercise you can do. If you could call yourself in the past, there's almost nothing you could say to yourself that would make your past self do something because you just wouldn't believe it. So it's like if you tried to contact yourself in the past and say, hey, just be careful on this night because you're going to get struck by lightning, like maybe you wouldn't believe that. Or
why is that? I think I could think of a ton of things that only I would know. No, not really.
But no.
But why is that more convincing? And why does that work better than giving a police station 70
post office?
It's a fucking and even
no,
less
it's
beautiful.
Western Union.
Okay.
Because the guy's like, boys back at the office have a bat on it, son.
So why not send two guys? Because it's a big goof. Why are you going to go by
there
yourself?
There are much bigger problems with the time travel. I mean,
that's true.
And so Zemeckis said, like, when they're creating the future world, which is the future, which is 2015, like he said, we weren't trying to accurately predict, we were just trying to have fun with it. And I think they treated the time travel the same way, because he was sick of stories about time travel where the lesson is you can't change anything. He's like, no, I want to be able to change things. That's fun. It doesn't follow. It's not really even internally consistent, because they go to 2015, right? And Marty gets the sports almanac. Biff finds the sports almanac, finds the time machine, figures out how to use it, travels back in time, and gives himself,
right,
in 1955, the sports almanac. Then he returns to 2015, right?
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. But Marty and Doc then travel back into 1985 and things have changed. Why weren't things already changed? Why was Biff able to go back to the old 2015?
Why? Oh,
and then Doc...
Did he turn just as sad and decrepit again because they rectified the almanac situation?
But if they rectified it, nothing should ever have changed.
Right.
But they got to go to the temporary alternate 1985, which means that they should instantaneously have been transported to the alternate 2015. Because Doc even says, like, once they're in 1985, Marty says, well, why can't we just go back to 2015? And he says, no, if we go to 2015, it'll be the alternate 2015. Yeah. That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense.
Because they were in the old... Anyway.
Oh,
ignore
so
predestination paradigm. It's so cool. How can you say
it's
boring?
Not if you can't... I guess it's frustrating. Because I spend the entire time thinking of the likelihood and does it make sense, and I'm not having any fun.
Yeah. I think in when this movie came out in 89, and Doc Brown draws on his blackboard and demonstrates timelines and things like that, it definitely had to be like one of the first mainstream exposures that these ideas had. Mm-hmm. And when I was a kid and I saw it, it just blew my fucking mind. If you did it today, it wouldn't seem as sophisticated because we're now, we're just nerdier as a culture and we've been exposed to more time travel stories and
I still don't
poke
think
holes
anyone's
in it.
Doing it better though.
There was a movie called Primer, which was like a serious exploration of what you do with time travel, where these people invent a time machine that sends them back like a day, and they just like make a little stock market purchase and then go wait in a hotel room.
Okay.
And like don't like turn off the TV and just sit there and wait until it's the present again. Mm-hmm. And then, but like even trying to be as careful and not do anything, not change or get exposed to anything, still fucks up the entire universe, and you get like the foreboding nosebleeds and stuff.
Or they've got leukemia. Or they've been using a lot of Afrin, like I have.
Like you have, because you've been getting a lot of nosebleeds. If we were in a movie, your nosebleeds would be
I told you,
the ominous sign of something terrible.
Yeah, I clearly have movie leukemia, or I've been using a lot of
time, or you've been using a time machine.
Either or.
What else about this movie? This is Marty
McFly is very irresponsible.
Yes.
For him to put so much trust into that kook
Yeah.
who's gotten him into a lot of turmoil and just leaving his girlfriend strewn all over the place in an alley and then on a porch that's clearly not hers. And even after they figure out, oh no, 1985 is wrong and this isn't my house, so I'll bet that's not Jennifer's house or whatever her name is. They don't go get her.
No.
I'm upset with that.
But it's fine because they're going to set things right and everything will be fine. And Jennifer and the dog will be okay.
See, that's an interesting thing about consciousness then. Like, so if it's a simulation of your consciousness put inside of a game just for your pleasure, but that consciousness still feels hurt and pain, is that not still morally wrong? So even if just this
Sure.
Jennifer gets erased, she
But
still
that's-
gets raped
Yes,
the
that's
shit
why-
out of on that porch and then corrected.
Well, that's like in erasing this alternate universe, Marty and Doc are killing all
Oh,
of
right,
these people.
right. What about all those
They're
babies?
destroying this universe. Right? If
Yeah.
it never existed, like, yeah.
Right. Okay. A lot of people are having a good life.
Because either like if you can change things, if you are capable of changing things with time travel, you shouldn't be able to. But if you are, then you seem to be operating under like you're not traveling through time, you're traveling to a different universe where things are changing because of things you're doing. So if you stop that universe from existing, like you are killing all those people,
Right.
right?
Well, yeah, and you're undoing whatever rights you accidentally righted by doing something that wronged you. So
Yeah.
every time you shift your wrong, you're shifting lots of rights.
Right.
And it ain't right.
No, it's wrong. I'm gonna be so annoyed when I listen back to this because we've said. Yeah. I know I've said something
You're
incorrect.
saying you want to stop and pretend this didn't happen,
Yeah,
erase
we'll go
this
back.
universe, and then we'll start over and
Yeah.
you'll make it right again.
Exactly.
And we'll lose all the
Right.
things that were right inside of all those little wrong. All right. Yep.
So, what did this movie get right about 2015? Because there are actually a few things.
Yeah. Using a tablet
Mm-hmm.
apart from, that's separate from any kind of wire or cord or
Right.
whatever.
The thumbprint and thumbprints to
Thumbprint.
pay for things like
Yes.
mobile payments on a
Yes.
taxi.
Yeah.
So they have a drone, a news footage drone.
Accelerated use of holograms.
There was hands, like the kids are like, you have to use your hands for that game. That's so lame. Like they have
Right.
like Xbox Connect.
Yeah, I'm aware.
You're aware of
But
this?
in virtual,
you heard of
virtual
this?
reality, too.
Well, virtual reality too, but the idea that you could play a video game without actually having to.
Well, what they got wrong was that it would be not cool to be retro nerdy and to still like all the old stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, people still really. There's a whole bunch of people who think it's super cool to still play
but
arcade games.
not usually little kids. I don't know. I don't know.
think
I might
I've
be
ever
wrong about
seen-
that.
I mean, an arcade is still cool, no
Yeah,
matter.
that's true.
Yeah, that still hasn't gone away.
That's true. But yeah, like I said, they
Oh.
weren't trying to accurately.
That there would be such a thing as a retro every kind of decade cafe. It truly is only the diner kind of 1950s aesthetic that still has a retro cafe. There's no throwback 80s cafe anywhere. People don't do that with the 70s. They don't do it with the 60s, and they don't do it with the 90s. And so they assumed that everything would end up having like a golden era where we would do a Disney World version of that decade.
Right, but there
didn't
is. We'll talk about it with Empire Records, but like, the internet has kind of taken the place of the diner. You don't have to go to a diner. You can just live constantly in the past on the internet by
You're
sharing
asking me
memes
what
and stuff.
they got wrong.
I'm responding to what you said about how only the 50s have nostalgia diners. You don't have 80s nostalgia diners, but instead you have entire movements online of people who
Sure,
celebrate and live
that's
the 80s all the time. I
fine.
mean, you have LARPs. You have like 1980s LARPs.
You're still not. I just mean like the idea of themed dining. That was
Mm-hmm.
a much bigger deal. I don't know, maybe 15, 20
Yeah.
years ago with the Disneyfication of everything, right?
Yeah.
And a popular theme was always just, your super all-American looking apple pie diner feel.
Uh-huh.
It's just funny that they thought that there'd be every kind of decade diner specifically. Like, well, now let's do
I understand.
big hair.
No, I understand.
And eat nachos.
Though again, they said they weren't actually trying to predict what's going to happen. It's just
What
like,
the
wouldn't
fuck
that be
was
funny?
your question for then? Okay, you said what did they get right and what did they get?
They weren't trying to get things right, but they did. They accidentally got things right.
Oh my god!
Okay, fucking. So this movie has produced there are a couple of
I think it's
hoaxes.
funny.
that people that this movie has generated. One is that it accurately predicted that a baseball team from Miami that didn't exist when the movie was made in 1989 would win the World Series. Right. The hoax went that in the movie,
because it's a sports almanac movie. That's funny.
But they said that the movie claims that a Miami baseball team will win the World Series in 1997.
No, it was against the Cubbies. The Cubbies won.
But it doesn't actually happen in the movie. What happens is the Cubs lose to the Miami Gators in 2015. So I don't know why people did that, but then the movie The Future takes place in 2015, but for a few years leading up to that, every few months people online would be like, today's the day that Marty McFly traveled into the future and Back to the Future too. Mm-hmm. And they'd have a photoshopped time panel that shows the date being like, April 4th, 2013. Anyway, that used to happen a lot.
You mean people just photoshopping and making any day that day?
Yeah.
Oh.
Be like, did you guys know today is the day? But it never was until October 2015. Okay, this isn't interesting.
No.
So they go back to 1985. There's the shitty Biff alternate reality.
There's no non-shit Biff, but all right.
Well, but the reality is shitty, which is,
all of his realities.
Often how one feels about the world right now. Feels like somebody's screwed with the timeline. Donald Trump is the president. That's kind of...
Oh, right.
It really... like, if you tried to explain that to someone... Okay. Biff... The guy playing Biff, I think, is really good. He's like, very menacing, but also really funny.
Hate and enjoy watching.
Then they go back to 1955, and like I said, I think the best idea is let's revisit the first movie, but don't let the first movie see you. Because if the first movie sees you, everything goes to hell. Because
everything's going so well right now.
Yeah. The conclusion of this movie is like Marty has no choice but to then go meet the doc from the first movie. Because that's his only choice, and I like that. But I did feel watching it this time, like the plot is really video gamey. It's like, okay, obstacle, accomplish your mission. Oh shit, new obstacle. And like Doc's actually on a walkie-talkie, like giving Marty his instructions. Like, all right, now you gotta go drop the sandbag on the goons. Okay, you did that. Great. Now you have to go get the almanac.
There's so many obstacle, victory, obstacle, victory that I no longer understood the flow of the movie. I was getting really aggravated with when does it end?
Yeah, you were very aggravated.
And then because of that exact there was no one storyline seemed to be the arc, and that's annoying. It was chaos. And then, of course, it fucking ends in the middle. Like, it's not done. And we're going to the Old West. Like, and I don't even care about your teaser.
And that's why the third movie was filmed simultaneously with the second movie. It's the only movie I know of that ends with a trailer. And yeah, the third movie is just a Western. It's just a comedic Western. I think that's why it's everybody's least favorite. But, I don't know. This movie's enjoyable. Doc and Marty are both, Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd are both very fun. Even I joked about how when I was a kid I thought Marty McFly was a badass, but I think even when I was a kid I thought it was a little silly that when he gets called chicken he has to turn around like, what did you call me?
It's just so wholesome. It's so wholesome that you looked at a movie like that and thought, that's one badass motherfucker. And it's like, and to me it looked like I could push that boy and he'd fall over.
Yeah. She
even got a squeaky I haven't hit puberty voice.
The two actors from the first movie didn't return for the second movie. Crispin Glover, who played George McFly, asked for too much money to return for the second movie, so they kind of wrote him out, but then he's still there with a double, and they used makeup and like sunglasses to try to make you think it's still Crispin Glover.
That's why they hardly used... Yeah, you don't see
he's
him
like
at
floating
all.
upside down at one point.
Oh, okay.
And apparently, so Crispin Glover sued them for using his likeness without his permission, and now apparently there are Screen Actors Guild rules against doing this. You can't suggest that somebody's in the movie if they're not in the movie.
That's a brilliant rule.
Well,
because, that would be fucking anarchy.
And then Elizabeth Shue replaced what is her name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer. Who was the original actress? Claudia Wells played Jennifer in the first movie. She didn't return for the second movie because she had to take care of her sick mother.
Why are we talking about this part?
I don't know. I think it's interesting that this movie had 2 actors who didn't return from the second movie, and that the filmmakers had to deal with that because they had to refilm the ending of the first movie.
Right, because you never have a scenario where you actually have to pretend you're back inside of it, and you can't even use the actors. Okay.
And
well, they really should have got those
they
guys
said
to
if
sign
they
contracts.
if they were planning a second movie, they wouldn't have ended the first movie with Jennifer getting into the DeLorean because they didn't actually have any plans for what to do with her. That's why they just like, all right, we'll just put her somewhere. So yeah, Back to the Future 2, it's fine. If you're 12 years old, you'll like it. I still kind of like it. I kind of want to watch the first one, but I'll be okay if I don't.
3, 4. Everybody, love me.